In this episode, we'll dig deep into the Tampa Bay Lightning and Montreal Canadiens final with Erik Erlendsson and Ian Boivert. Also head out to LA with Dennis Bernstein to discuss the Victor Arvidsson trade and what this means for the LA Kings. Sounds as if they're ready to reel in a big fish soon enough. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Borjaranov, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, go to jablamsports.com, see all our podcasts, and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on this show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts, and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. Time for some trending now. And there's already some things in the mix, even though the playoffs aren't even over yet. Joining me to discuss some trending topics in the NHL is Dennis Bernstein. He's on the hot stove on Sirius XM Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and on Kings of the Podcast covering the LA Kings. You can find him on Twitter at DennisTFP. Dennis, welcome back.
EB, always a pleasure. Let's get to it. Let's talk some puck.
So before we talk about that Kings trade and everything, how are you enjoying the finals right now?
I enjoyed it better when Montreal actually won a game. Pete. So I think Tampa's going to close the deal tomorrow night. I was supposed to go to Game 5. I've been to Games 1 and 2 in Tampa, but my better judgment told me not to fly into the middle of a hurricane tonight. So I'm not going to be flying to Tampa for Game 5. We'll do the pre-game show with me, Dave Pagnotta, at 7:30 Eastern on Sirius XM, but I will not be in Tampa for Game 5. It's been underwhelming. I think the one takeaway for me shows me how good the Islanders were, that they could take a team like Tampa to a 7-game and lose 1-0 in the 7th game. So to me, it was an overmatch on paper, and when you don't get a good performance by Carey Price out of the box and you turn over the puck a lot, you're going to lose to Tampa Bay. So surprising victory last night, Pete, and to me the most surprising thing was you told me with a minute to go, Shea Weber's going to take a 4-minute high-sticking penalty in a tie game. I'm telling you the game's over. So over 5 on the power play for Tampa, which was the biggest shock for me. And a guy like Josh Anderson finally arrived. So 2 big performances by Carey Price being Carey Price again, and Josh Anderson getting those 2 goals, including the game winner. So I give him a puncher's chance in Game 5, but I think that just Tampa's just going to be too talented and going to raise the cup tomorrow night in Tampa.
Hey, I picked it. I said 3-2 win for the Habs. I had a feeling Price had it in him, and they were at home. I don't know. Magical things happen. Can they strike twice? I don't think so as well.
No, I think coming in, you'd say Tampa in 5 would be a good pick. And again, they've represented them well. They haven't been embarrassed. They're just not – they're the second best team in this cup final, without question, Pete.
Yeah. So the LA Kings pulled off a pretty interesting, solid deal here, acquiring Victor Arvidsson from the Nashville Predators for a 2nd and 3rd round pick in opposing drafts. First off, is this a sign that the rebuild is kind of over now for the Royal team? Are we trending towards building with this current older group of champs with this new fresh blood?
Yeah, I think this is the move that they had to make. I asked Rob Blake at the end of last season if the way the roster was presently constituted, if it's good enough to make the postseason. He goes, no, it's not. So we knew this was coming, Pete. This was a situation where you can only have so many draft picks and so many prospects. At that point in time, you got to move some of them for established players. The interesting thing on Arvidsson is that David Poyle, who's the GM of Nashville, was pretty transparent. He did an interview on radio in Nashville and said, yeah, we talked to Ronnie Francis. They were going to take Victor Arvidsson. So as opposed to losing him for nothing in the expansion draft, we got a 2nd and 3rd round pick, got value. But yeah, this is the point in time where the LA has to start importing talent, Pete. They traded away 6 roster players. The only player they got back after all those trades right now is Trevor Moore. So it's a situation where if they think they're going to compete, and I'll be honest with you, they didn't have a good season, people. But when you look at the division, you look at the Pacific next season, Colorado's leaving, Arizona's leaving, Minnesota's leaving, a Seattle team, an expansion team's coming in, and the 3 Canadian teams. So if you look at it, you want to handicap the division, it would be Vegas, I think, wins by maybe 15 points, Edmonton, and after that, it's up for grabs. So the Kings have a legitimate shot if they import some more talent, and they're looking to. They'll probably add another forward. They hope to add a top pair defenseman on the left side. So they have opportunity if they make the right moves because, Pete, I'll submit to you, regardless of what they do, they can make any trade. Like they can sign any free agent. They have enough prospects. They have enough futures. They have enough cap space to make any move. And I think this is the first of at least a few moves in the offseason for Rob Blake and the LA Kings.
2 things on that. Number one, you're leaving me open with the Kraken and thinking, I saw the odds 100-1. That division is open. Should I put money on the Kraken now with getting some decent players and at least making a playoff spot? Is it possible?
No, Pete, I think if you believe in the Kraken, I think the bet you want to make is the over-under on the number of points, standing points next year. The over-under on Seattle is 65.5. So if you think they can win 27, 28 games, get some overtime points in losses, then bet on them. So I think that's it. Are they going to make the postseason? I think the people in Seattle have to manage their expectations. This is not the Vegas Golden Knights Part 2. I think GM's wised up. They realized, like we talked to Billy Guerin today. I know you'll talk to me about the Eriksson Ek deal. Yeah. I talked to Billy Guerin today on Sirius XM, and he said, you know what? We're going to lose a decent player, and we have to manage around it. So I think that the fact that protecting a player who won't get picked and giving extra picks or extra prospects, I think GMs have learned from their mistakes. So I don't think Seattle is going to be set up like Vegas was 4 seasons ago.
Yeah, we already saw that with a lot of teams not yet signing guys like Ovechkin, Zach Hyman and stuff. Right. It seems like they're just waiting for the expansion draft to happen and go, okay, now we can bring these guys back.
Yeah. And it's so surprising. Usually the league doesn't like when teams announce trades in the Cup Finals. It's kind of a little surprised that the Kings announced that it's trade in the middle of the Stanley Cup Final, but a necessary move for Rob Blake and company. Because at this point in time, Pete, their tenure, Blake and Robitaille, they've been in the chair for 4 years. First year they made the playoffs with Dean Lombardi's team. They haven't made the postseason since. And, you got to sell tickets. You got to bring fans back in the building. And another year of non-playoffs, it's the end of their contract. There's a question if they don't make the postseason, if they're going to be renewed because they really need to get back in a competitive. And if division, Pete, you mentioned Seattle making the playoffs. I think right now it's the worst from strength. It's the worst division in hockey right now. So the Kings have a legitimate shot if they make the right moves. I think they get to the 3 seed.
Everybody has a shot. Will the Kings is it possible they can make a major deal here? We know there's other big fish in the sea. We've heard the rumors. We know that the rumors, we talked about it on here. You probably talked about it many times about Jack Eichel. Is there still a possibility of Jack Eichel or somebody else, a big fish going to the City of Angels?
Well, let's talk about the possibility of Jack Eichel moving. And I'll give you one interview that Kevin Adams did with Pierre LeBrun, who said basically, okay, we have parts here we can build from. We have kids like Middlestat and Dylan Cousins and Rasmus Dahlin. And he didn't mention Jack Eichel. So to me, look, you could hold on to Jack. You have to trade him by the beginning of next season when his no movement trade clause clicks in. Because the one thing you don't want Jack Eichel to have is more control of the situation. He already has enough control. So I think the fact that there's conversations out there about Jack. Kevin Adams talks about the future and doesn't mention Jack Eichel. I think it's just a matter of who and where he moves to. Yeah. But if I'm a GM, I got to make sure he's totally healthy, And the thing about either LA or Anaheim, let's say Jack did this controversial surgery, okay, and he wasn't ready till November or December. Well, the Kings and Ducks really aren't prime time, competing for the Stanley Cup right now. They're not significant contenders. So could they wait 2 months for Jack? He's going to be 100% healthy and trade for him? Yeah, they could. My partner on the Kings of the podcast, John Hoven, has basically said they're not trading for him. We'll see. If if Buffalo drops the price and it's just futures, fine. Yeah, it could still happen. I just think it's a limited number of teams that both have the futures, Pete, and have the cap space to trade for Jack Eichel. If I was Rod Blake, I'd move heaven and earth to trade for the guy. When he's healthy, he's an 80-point scorer, and he would give Kopitar. And then you could take your time with respect to either Velarde and you could probably trade Velarde at that point, or even Quentin Byfield. You could take your time and let for them to develop, because Kobe's got 3 years left on his deal. And the other thing that people don't forget about Jack Eichel, he's only got 5 years left on his deal. He doesn't have a max term contract. So you take him to his free agency year of 29 years old. If he's still producing for you, sign him. So I think it's a move I would make. I don't think the Kings are going to make that move, even though they have the goods to make the deal.
So let's go back to what started this whole talk. And, of course, talking about a person that was wondering how healthy he can be. And that brings me back to Victor Arvidsson. When he's healthy, we've seen what he does. We've seen what he can do. 29 or more goals, 3 straight seasons in a row. The last 2 seasons, he's only played about 50 games. Number one, that was 2 years ago when he had those seasons. Number one, can he stay healthy? And if he can he return to that form from 2 years ago?
Well, the problem with that, Pete, is that he had a knee injury. Robert Bortuzzo, I believe, cross-checked him a couple of seasons ago, and he hasn't been the same player since. If you look at his advanced stats, he hasn't been able to score off the rush. And that was his signature. Now, I will say this. He's a shooter. He's going to shoot the puck. And the one thing the Kings don't have right now on this team is a shoot-first mentality from one of their forwards. So to me, I like the trade. Even if he's a 25-goal scorer, it's going to give Kopitar a finisher that he doesn't have, right? Alex Iafallo, solid two-way guy. He's the forechecker. Doesn't have a lot of touch around the net. Dustin Brown's your net front presence guy. Like Arvidsson would give him a guy who's a finisher, who's a shooter. Right? Even if he's lost a step, could he still shoot the puck? Yeah, that's what they need. And certainly what the power play needs. They don't have that threat that you have to defend against on the power play. So I like the trade. Minimal cost, as you mentioned. They've traded 2 picks. They have multiple picks in both the rounds, both the second this year and the third next year. I think it's a smart, fair, somewhat, Pete, to be honest, it's no risk deal. If it doesn't work out, you could waive him or whatever. But I think that the question is, is he that 30-goal scorer, or is he that 10-goal and 50-goal scorer he was in Nashville? And that's why Nashville gave up on him, was going to expose him in the expansion draft. So I think that's the big question. But I think at this point in time, it's a risk. But it can't be their only move in Los Angeles. Yeah. You need to have a legit player who is going to score, come in the forward wall and add to this team as well.
That's why I posed the question about Eichel. Just to let everybody know, in the upcoming weeks, we'll have 3 special episodes for Jablam Sports Hockey this summer. 1 for each of the big things: the expansion draft, the free agency, and of course the entry draft. So if you have any questions, go to our website, jablamsports.com/contact, or you can reach us on social media at Jablam Sports, or directly to myself at Russia98. So before you leave, Dennis, it's been a few days now, but we've been seeing these players with the three names signing contracts. RNH, JEE. Is this a trend towards players like PLD signing contracts? No, I'm just joking. Both RNH and Joel Eriksson Ek both signed long-term deals with, maybe you could say, team-friendly or lower cap hits than you might expect. And I obviously it's got to be because of the flat cap. And we've seen some deals go this way. Is that what we're going to be expected to see now with these middle term, these second, third line guys over the next 2 seasons now? Yeah.
Well, Pete, I'll tell you this. Those Jeff Skinner contracts that we saw in 2016, they're gone. If you want term, you're going to have to give up a little bit of AAV. If you want full AAV, you're not going to get max terms. So I think this is the reality of it. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins wanted to stay at Edmonton. He's happy there. He's playing with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. He gave up a little bit of money in the AAV. He got a long-term deal. Eriksson Ek got stability. He wants to stay there. He's playing with Kaprizov. Hopefully they can sign Kaprizov and Kevin Fiala. So, I think that this is a situation where maybe in the open market, look, Nugent Hopkins would have got $6 million a year from somebody, but, it would have been 7 years, not 8. It wouldn't have been maybe in a place that he wanted to play. So he didn't want to take a risk. So this is where we're going, Pete. It's going to be one or the other. You can't have both. You're not going to be signing $9 million 8-year deals. It's just not going to happen anymore. That's the reality of the flat cap. And I also think it's wisdom by GM saying that you really can't lay out 70, 65, $70 million for a player. I mean, Taylor Hall and Mike Hoffman learned a painful lesson in this past offseason. They got 1-year deals. Right. And even Taylor Hall said, I need, I want to play for a contender. I want more stability. That signals to me that saying, and most of these guys who were signing now, not Erlendsson, Ek, but Hall, Nugent Hopkins, they've made a lot of money playing hockey. Now they want to win, and now they want stability. And so that's what you get. So, I agree with you, Peter. I think it's a middle ground. It's a situation where that deal, Erlendsson, Ek, Billy Guerin said, look, I just want to be fair with my players. And I think that was more than fair deal because Erlendsson, Ek has improved over time, had a breakout season this year. Part of the solution in Minnesota. So I think it's a fair deal for both sides. But again, I don't think you're going to get to these whopping AAVs in any of these deals for these players going forward, at least for the next couple of seasons.
So we won't be seeing guys like Scott Gomez or Martin Lapointe making these crazy deals that changes everything and makes having the CBA be changed. And of course, the last few years with the Luciches and the Louis Eriksson type deals, which were just bad deals to make.
Yeah, well, hey, it's the reality of the flat cap. And what it does, PB, is it squeezes out the middle class. Like you can't have a $4 million player on your third line anymore. You can't, unless you've got a lot of prospects or you got guys like in Tampa signing $1 million deals like Bogosian did or like Pat Maroon did or like Corey Perry in Montreal. You can't have those type of players. You're going to have like a cash system. You're going to have really high-priced players and you're going to have guys on entry-level deals or guys like Corey Perry and Jason Spezza are looking to still play. They made their money. They still want to be competitive and play the sport and take a chance at a Stanley Cup title. So I think that's what you're looking at right now. So so that middle ground, those middle players, you're going to have to, I'll give you a perfect example. Adrian Kempe is probably on this team if they get another forward, a third line player. He's making $2 million a year. That's what if you're a third line player, that's what you're going to come in at. You're not going to come in at $5 million a year. The economics won't allow for it.
So tell me this, does that work in the dressing room? We saw the Leafs do that kind of thing, overpaying, maybe not overpaying, but like paying before they've really done anything in the playoffs, but giving them those big contracts to Matthews and Marner and then having to sign only those aging veterans like Thornton, Spezza, and Simmons, and them obviously at that age maybe not being able to perform like they did. First off, does it work in the dressing room with those players playing that way? And does it work for a team to contend?
Well, I think it works in some rooms. It depends on the room, Pete, right? Like it works for Tampa. They brought in Bogosian. Bogosian got his contract terminated by Buffalo, and he came in and won a title, right? Corey Perry's been look, he got bought out by Anaheim. He was effective in Dallas. They went to a cup final. He was effective in Montreal. They went to a cup final. So it depends on the player. Like Joe Thornton didn't do well in the postseason, right? So it depends on age. It depends on a lot of factors, but it's a factor that has to be included. So you got to have glue guys. You got to have veteran presence. So when people talk about the futures and you can't trade a first-round pick, well, guess what, right? Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow were traded for first-round picks. Like they are not first-round pick players, but they were traded first-round picks, and they're now on the cusp of winning back-to-back titles. Granted, they're low first-round picks, but that's where we are right now, Pete. So I can't say like it's not the route to go with the signing the veterans. You got to sign the right guys. It's as simple as that. It's about chemistry, and the guys at the top of the food chain in Toronto got to deliver. It's time, right? It's time. You got to at least win a series. Like, come on, let's go. I mean, that's look. If you got to the conference final and lost to, I don't know, Tampa Bay, I get it. That would be like the Islanders. They have nothing to be ashamed about. But Toronto, maybe that mix doesn't work. Maybe you got to move. I don't think Hyman's going to come back. Maybe you trade a William Nylander. But there's more and more pressure. And that's why some players don't want to play in the big market because there's going to be a hell of a lot of pressure on Marner and Matthews. They had great seasons, and they did nothing in the playoffs. And that's the issue. That's the question. So it's a question of how to build this team. And I just think Stevie Yzerman and Julian Boisvert behind them did a masterful job of building that roster.
They sure did. And they'll have an interesting summer ahead of them. Again, you can find him on Twitter at DennisTFP. Dennis, thanks for stopping by again.
Always a pleasure, PB. Thanks for bringing me on Job on Sports. Appreciate it.
Stanley Cup final has been extended by the Habs. They've staved off elimination and taken it back to Tampa for Game 5. Joining me to discuss this series, of course, the Canadiens and the Lightning. Back in the show is my pal Ian Boivert. He's the managing editor at Rabid Habs. And you can hear him on the Nosebleedscast talking all things Habs. You can find him on Twitter at Maybe It's Ian. Welcome back to the show, Ian.
Thanks, Peter. How are you?
I'm enjoying this series. Let's introduce as well Erik Erlendsson. He's, of course, been covering the Tampa Bay Lightning for over 20 years now. You can find him at thelightninginsider.com and on Twitter at Erik_Erlendsson. Welcome back as well, Erik.
Thanks, Pete. Good to be back with you, bud.
So you guys are both enjoying how the series is going so far?
A little bit. From a Canadian standpoint, a little bit more so now.
Mm-hmm.
A sweep wouldn't have been any fun. I think, after we saw the way the first three games went, I don't think a lot of Canadiens fans expected to win, more than a few more games if they even got that.
Mm-hmm.
In Game 4, we got one more really cool moment with Josh Anderson winning the game in overtime. Not. Even if, this doesn't end in a Stanley Cup, which I don't think it does at this point, it would take one really, really special comeback. This run has given Canadiens fans a lot of really, really cool moments, from the winner last night to Lekkonen's overtime winner that sent them to the Cup final.
Mm-hmm.
The two overtime winners against the Leafs in the first round. Like there's tons of stuff here that was still loads of fun along the way. And I think the Lightning are exactly what we thought they were, which I think a lot of the more positive outlooks on the series from the beginning from Canadiens fans looked at, well, maybe the Lightning aren't as good as they seem to be. They're every ounce as good as we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, they are phenomenal. Before we get to the Lightning, let me throw that at you with the moves made by Coach Dom Ducharme, and he's been criticized ever since he was replaced. He replaced Claude Julien. But are they really still criticizing now with all the major moves? They've seen that they've paid off in spades. And just breaking them down in Game 4, and you mentioned him already, the OT winner, he moves up Josh Anderson into that line, and that works perfectly.
Yeah, Anderson doesn't have the numbers that really back up, if you just look at the numbers on the score sheet or any of this sort of analytics that come out around Anderson's game, he doesn't jump off the page. But you watch him play, and the guy just flies. Like, he could skate. He's not just fast for his size; he's just fast. He's a little all gas, no brakes when it comes to that sometimes, which does hurt him a little bit.
And people are complaining again. He collides into Vasilevsky. I'm like, come on, there's no real penalty there.
No, I mean, and he, for the most part, does a pretty decent job not crashing into the goaltender. I'm not saying he's perfect at it, but he does stop in time most of the time.
He's not Chris Kreider, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, but he just. I find that Anderson plays alone a lot of the time. So, he needs to play on a line where there's two other guys who are sort of doing their own thing. And I think that works because Caulfield and Suzuki have this really special chemistry already, just a few games into Caulfield's actual career. And next year, he's still going to be a rookie. So, I mean, Dom Ducharme's lineup changes, I've stopped getting angry about them because it's not really worth it at this point. Would I love to have seen Kotkaniemi play? Yeah, it's a little weird that they have this kid who was picked 3rd overall, and they've played him for 3 straight seasons, and then their season's on the line in the Stanley Cup final, and he's not playing.
It worked. Jake Evans, that worked as well, right?
And it wasn't so much that I like Evans. I was really happy to see him come back in the lineup. I think he plays a really, really effective bottom 6 role, which, to be fair to Dom Ducharme, I don't think Jesperi Kotkaniemi can play particularly well. He's one of those guys where if he's not playing in your top 6, you kind of have to wonder what he's doing. Would I have liked to see Kotkaniemi in? Yes. I was very happy that Alexander Romanov found his way back in the lineup along with Brett Kulak, because I think fans by and large have been asking for that sort of thing for a while.
But the timing worked.
and it paid off. I mean, every move that Ducharme made seems to have paid off immediately. So I can't really criticize the guy as much as maybe I would have liked to before the game started.
So we go to Tampa. Let's get Erik in here. It seems like Dom Ducharme's making the right moves. What moves might Cooper make? Could we maybe see Killorn back in? How is he? Is there any other moves he can make to change the lineup for Game 5?
There's no need. There's no moves you have to make. I mean, the moves that Montreal made paid off on the scoreboard. I mean, obviously Romanov's goal was huge at the time, but let's face it, he's probably not on the ice in that situation if it wasn't for the fact the very rare triple matching minors that sent two of Montreal's top four defensemen into the penalty box for 2 minutes. They took advantage of it. It was a great shot by him. It was a great scene, or a great screen set by Lehkonen. But from a Tampa Bay perspective, I mean, look at the numbers. I mean, they did everything but win the game. And, the high danger chances, I think, were 15-3 at even strength. And, all the lines were just, on point. And, but give Montreal a ton of credit. They showed a lot of heart. That overtime goal by Josh Anderson is just pure guts, right? Like, it's just pure all-out effort. And you love to see that in that situation. But if you're Tampa Bay, what do you need to change? I mean, the only question is can Killorn play? We know he took warm-ups last night. He did not get into the lineup. John Cooper was asked about it again before the team departed Montreal, and he says, well, he's probably in a game-time decision mode here again, and it's going to be up to him whether he can play or not. But even if he doesn't play, I mean, Matthew Joseph, look at the impact Matthew Joseph has had in the Stanley Cup final. He's got 2 assists in 3 games, for a guy who's only getting 7-8 minutes a game. So, I mean, that's just where Tampa Bay is. They're so deep that even if losing a guy like Killorn, who you miss, and I think you really miss him on that top power play unit in terms of his net front presence and his ability to retrieve pucks down low for the top unit, they can plug in a guy like Matthew Joseph and not feel like you're missing much, to be honest with you. But, Killorn is missed. If he can play, that'll be a big boost. But, tactically, I don't really need to think they need to change too much. They were able to get their attack going. They hit 3 posts last night. If you're Tampa Bay, you feel good about the way you did play the game, even though it didn't go your way.
Let me jump the gun right here. And I'm going to go with it. But if Tampa wins, is this the last we see of Killorn? Is this the last we see of maybe some of these guys like the triplets and stuff in Tampa? Changes are due. I'm guessing there's no magical player that won't be playing for a whole season and then enters the lineup, right? They're going to be way over the cap then.
They're over the cap already. Yep. 17 players under contract. They're already over the cap.
I can attack you for that, but I'm not going to do the whole cap thing that everybody's attacking Tampa, cheating and everything. But I want to talk about what changes could be made going on for next season.
Well, I think that's some of the extra motivation here for Tampa Bay. Obviously, the Cup is the motivation, and winning back-to-backs and sort of planting that sort of legacy for this group and this, this franchise and the success they've had over the past 6 years. But there's an understanding. I mean, you're not going to be able to bring back a Blake Coleman. He's too expensive. You're not going to be able to bring back a David Savard, and you knew that when you acquired him from Columbus. Probably a good chance you can't bring back Barclay Goodrow, who's been so effective, and it's just a great fit for this team. And you're going to lose a player to Seattle in the expansion draft. Everybody is, except for Vegas, of course. And it's going to be a quality player no matter who Seattle takes. So that's going to alleviate at least one decision. But after that, take your pick. Is it Tyler Johnson? Is it Yanni Gourde? Is it Alex Killorn? Is it Andre Palat? Anybody that's going to be making money in that $5 to $6 million range, you're going to have to find a way to shed. And, we know the situation that went on with Tyler Johnson in the offseason last year. Tried to trade him. He was put on waivers twice, everything else in order to try and help the cap situation. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no escaping it this time. I mean, even if we understand that Victor Hedman's probably going to have surgery at some point for whatever is ailing him. And it's a short offseason, right? Like, they will be done with this by no later than Sunday. And then you're going to have to turn around and basically 7-8 weeks later, you're going to be ready for training camp. So there is that potential that you could lose him depending on what the surgical procedure is going to end up being. But yeah, does that mean he's going to miss the entire 82-game season? Probably not, but we'll have to see. how that goes. But there's changes are coming, and I think the team knows that. They understand that the business side is going to catch up with them. Even though you don't have any big guys you have to have re-signed this year, you have to alleviate cap. And as I said, with 17 guys under contract, they're already over the cap right now as we talk.
Crazy. Let's get back into this series. He didn't look as focused in the first 3 games, but he looked focused again. Carey Price, he was vintage in Game 4. Of course, again, in an elimination game, he's now 4-0. You can go look at all the stats. Tremendous. He's been fabulous. How far can he keep this going, Ian? Can he make it 5-0 Wednesday?
Well, I think like Erik said, the Lightning kind of dominated that game from the initial puck drop. Mm-hmm. I think they hit 4 or 5 goalposts. Their power play went over, but it didn't look like it should have. They hit a bunch of posts. Kucherov setting up that sort of bumper play right to the middle of the slot is just one of the most deadly power plays I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, Point shot it right at Price, I think twice.
Yeah. I mean, Price will take those. He'll tell you, I was in position, and even the ones that hit the goalpost, he'll say, well, there was no net to shoot at. Yep. But even with that said, I mean, I'm as I've said, we just keep getting another moment. We keep getting more moments to enjoy this hockey team and the run that's been really special for the city and its fans. And we got one more really, really good Carey Price performance out of this. Now, part of me thinks that it was a little funny that they take Merrill and Gustafsson off the ice and suddenly Carey Price is a little bit better. Not to blame those two specifically, but they were the weakest links defensively, and they're consistently screening him on shots. Not to completely absolve Carey Price of his play at the beginning of the series. He was okay, but he wasn't Carey Price, even on the shots that he could see. But how far can this take him? I'm not really certain. I think, their backs are still against the wall, not as much as it was a few days ago. They've done a 3-1 comeback. So if you want to get into that mentality and just try to take it like they did in the Toronto series.
I don't remember that one, but continue.
I know I'm trying hard not to lay a little heavy on that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, and there's a lot of parallels to be drawn from that Toronto series to this series, in the sense that Toronto really dominated the first 4 games of that series, and the Canadiens managed to steal one in Toronto. But the Canadiens they rope-a-dope the Leafs in the first 4 games. It didn't work out in 3 of the 4 of them, but that seemed to be the game plan. They knew they weren't going to be able to skate with them. I don't think they had any sort of aspirations of being able to skate with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think any team in this league can. Mm-hmm. The way that the Lightning are currently built. And like you said, when we first jumped on, like, I just happy to be here. Honestly, that's we don't know what this team is going to look like next year when we head back to the Atlantic Division. And the team we just played in the Stanley Cup Final is our divisional opponent. There's a lot of things that happened this year that we might not see again. So I think a lot of these players are just sort of enjoying the moment. It's really great to see Suzuki out there doing really cool stuff for a kid in his early 20s. Cole Caulfield is still proving that he's, even at his size, is going to be a formidable threat to score in the NHL for a really long time. I think up and down the lineup, the Canadiens are a pretty deep team. They don't have the same depth that, the Lightning have, where it's like they have Tyler Johnson on their 4th line, but I think this is a much better team than they showed in the regular season. But like I've said the whole time, this Lightning team is special. They just are.
Since Ian brought up the center of the universe, Erik, let me throw this at you. Can this Maple Leaf team treat the Montreal Canadiens like a Blue Jackets? And is it possible they can become and adapt like the Tampa Bay Lightning have? They have that core, they have that talent, but they don't have that, as I like to put it, maybe that dirtiness or that grind that the Mitch Marners and the Austin Matthews are missing, which Kucherov and some of those other guys have found to go deep in the playoffs?
I don't know the ins and outs of Toronto, obviously, the way that I do Tampa Bay. I mean, they've tried it, right? Like they bring in a guy like Simmons, and, Jason Spetz has kind of played that game, later on here in his career. And, the thing is like Toronto's got so much money wrapped up in those three guys, particularly Tavares, Matthews, and Marner, that it doesn't offer you a lot of flexibility. That's the one thing that the Lightning have been able to do to reach this point. Yeah, losing to Columbus sort of fueled, sort of this mental mindset that they have, this mental toughness that they now have that maybe they didn't have before. But they've also been able to get the Cirellis, the Points, the Kucherovs, these guys who sign bridge deals and keep as much of this team together, right, and give themselves a better chance to win. And that has allowed the management to go out and acquire a David Savard, to acquire a Barclay Goodrow, to acquire Blake Coleman, and kind of fill out those roles. And at the end of the day, you've got 88 net, and nobody has 88 net. Montreal might be the closest team that has an 88 in net, and Andre Vasilevsky. He's been the rock because, this team has warts. They have areas where they need to be better defensively, but when they do break down, you get Vasilevsky there to protect you and kind of cover that up. So that has certainly helped. He's been the backbone of their success. So does Toronto have that guy? Frederik Andersen's had his moments, but he's not Andre Vasilevsky. So I don't know if the Leafs can get to there as they're currently constructed, just because of in a cap world, and especially a flat cap world, it's hard to find that flexibility.
So let's get back to this, finish off with the series. Tampa, following a loss, I think they're 29-8, and now they're back at home. That's what I pitched the idea. I thought, okay, maybe they might not want to win Game 4. Maybe they want to win in the packed stadium, in Amalie Arena, where they couldn't in the bubble, of course. Is this the time? Are they maybe a little bit too cocky because of they know where they're at right now and they're going home in front of their fans?
I'll tell you what, with the way they played in Game 4, they weren't playing as if they wanted to play a Game 5. Mm-hmm. I mean, the way they started the game, the only criticism you might be able to give them is you probably want to see some more urgency on that 4-minute power play they have at the end of the third that carries over for 3 minutes into the overtime. But if you've seen this team this year, you've seen plenty of moments where they don't have urgency in those situations. They should have had it last night, and we have a chance to win a goal or score a goal, win a cup because of it. They didn't have it. The carryover that always tends to mess teams up when you start fresh with ice. I know people say, hey, you get fresh ice. It just kind of discombobulates everything. So that's the one criticism you can probably have for their game in game number 4, because they came out like they wanted to win. Yeah. They had the right drive, the right effort, the right execution. You hit 3 posts. Carey Price makes some great saves early in the game to prevent Game 3 from happening when they got the 2 quick goals to start it. But having said all of that, this is a team with a different mental attitude, a different mental aspect. They will be on home ice. I think they are going to be fueled by that. And if you want to talk about things coming full circle, the last team to win a Stanley Cup on home ice was 2015, the Chicago Blackhawks. The team they beat was this group of Tampa Bay Lightning. Some players have changed here or there, but that core was on that ice for that. So I find it hard to think. The only way I think Montreal is able to squeeze this to a Game 6 is if Carey Price steals it.
Yeah. And I remember when the Blackhawks won and beat Tampa that year, there was many quotes from the Chicago leaders and experienced players on that team that they felt that Tampa was the next big thing, and it seems like they're right. Before we leave, Nikita Kucherov has made what you can call maybe the biggest in-year comeback since I think 1992 Mario Lemieux, when he was fighting with the herniated disc. I think he only played about 26 games that season. He's been outstanding since the puck dropped on the ice to start these playoffs. How has he been able to do? I think he's like above and beyond everybody in points.
Yeah, I think, wasn't there a year Peter Forsberg missed the entire regular season and led the playoffs in scoring for Colorado around 2000, 2001 time, I think. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on that, but I think I read that somewhere here. along the stretch. But yeah, I mean, he has. When you miss as much time as he did, I mean, they won in the bubble in September the 28th, and so his next game wasn't until the middle of May. I mean, that's a long time to go without playing, and all of a sudden he jumps in the lineup. He's got 2 goals and an assist on his first game back. That's just who he is. He just works so hard. I mean, again, we're talking about a guy who has a half sheet of synthetic ice in his garage at home, so he can work at home. He works on his shot. He works on everything in there. So he puts a lot of work into his craft, and he's been phenomenal. Back-to-back 30-point seasons here. Only 2 other guys have done it, Gretzky and Lemieux. That's pretty good company to have your name involved in. And he's just been fantastic for them. You see the difference he makes on their power play. I mean, the power play was okay during the regular season without him. Wasn't so good down the stretch when they were missing both Kucherov and Stamkos. Mm-hmm. But as soon as Kucherov came back, it's just teams have to pay so much attention to him in the way, because he's one of those guys who runs. He's the quarterback of the power play. He doesn't play up top, but everything flows through him along the half boards there. And to set up, point in the bumper, you want to take that away. He'll find Stamkos at the other end of the ice for the one-timer. You want to try and take that away. You got Victor Hedman back up top. Or hey, Nikita Kucherov might even shoot every now and then. But he's just a phenomenal player. And I don't think he probably gets enough credit for the work he's put in, especially this year, because all anybody wants to do is accuse him of faking an injury during the regular season to be ready for the playoffs. And that's the storylines involving Nikita Kucherov. But his presence on the ice is just, there's very few players who can do what he does.
And he does it oh so well. Right before we leave, I want Conn Smythe picks. I think Elliot Friedman has said that they have to do it 10 minutes before the game, even though somebody might score an OT winner or something and totally change who they're going to have to pick. Erik, go with you. Who's your lead guy for that award?
I have to respectfully decline answering that because I do have a vote for the Conn Smythe. All right. So I will not. I won't give any insight into it.
That's fine. And Ian?
I'll say Jake Allen then. No, no. I'm tending to lead Kucherov, but I mean, you couldn't go wrong with Kucherov or Vasilevsky, assuming that Tampa goes on and wins it in 5 or even 6 if it gets that far. Mm-hmm. Both those guys have been just all world talents for this Tampa Bay team. Either one would be worthy, but I think I'm leaning Kucherov.
Yep, I'm leaning Kucherov all the way as well. And I don't even think they would make it this far if it wasn't for Braden Point in those 2 rounds earlier. So it's
unfair the weapons that they have. Like, you could just keep going down the list. Like, well, why not? Hedman's playing fantastic too. He could get it. They've got an all-star team of guys who could win the playoff MVP. It's sickening.
Yeah, and the core.
And who's probably had one of the greatest silent impacts on this team in this playoff run? Is Ryan McDonagh. Mm-hmm. He's just been a beast. I mean, he's only got 7 points, but he's had some very important points. I mean, he set up he didn't get an assist on the shorthanded goal by Yanni Gordon Game 7 against the Islanders, but he set it all up.
Yep.
He had obviously the great assist last night. He had the assist on Brady Point's game winner in Game 1 against the Panthers with 1:14 left to set up a breakaway. His shot blocking, his everything. He's never going to be a guy with the way he's played that's really going to be in that consideration for that type of a trophy. But he has been absolutely fantastic in these playoffs.
Erik, why do you have to bring up McDonagh to Ian?
I know. It's funny.
That was a long time ago.
I thought he was going to say Sergachev, and then he said that. It just twisted the knife a little bit further.
Oh, my goodness. I did go see at the Garden McDonagh play for the Rangers at the beginning of his career, and I was like looking at the way, because you can't see the way he plays until you see him in person, how he reads the play. And his skating is actually pretty good. I don't know how it is at his age, but I was telling my buddy who's not a hockey fan, I'm like, look what he's doing. See how he's getting into the play where he's not supposed to be, where nobody else is reading? There it is. And boom, he gets the puck. I'm like, these are not instincts that you can teach a normal person. And McDonagh and, of course, many of the Bolts have. Phenomenal. Again, you can find them on Twitter at Erik_Erlendsson for Erik and at maybe it's Ian for Ian. Again, gentlemen, thank you for stopping by.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks to my guest today, Dennis Bernstein. It's always great chatting with him. I swear, well, I don't like swearing too much, but I swear, that guy knows how each team in the entire league is doing. Erik Erlendsson, who understands the pulse of the Lightning, and as well thanks to my guy Ian Boivert. I'm so glad his Canadiens are bringing him this much joy. Outside of that first round win, you know what I mean. Again, we'll have information on all our guests on our episode page for this episode 30, Season 6, jablamsports.com. Check it out, everybody. Please subscribe if you haven't done so to the podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Also, check out our next big 3 episodes coming up in the next 3 weeks. We've got the Seattle Kraken expansion draft, the NHL entry draft, and of course, free agency is going to be opening up, and we'll have a special episode for that. Some great guests. Tune in. Follow us on social media, Jablam Sports. Thank you, everyone. Remember, if you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode, or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at Russia98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. If you want, you can also contact us on our website. You can use the hashtag at Jablam Sports, Jablam Sports, that's JABLAM, and our website is jablamsports.com/contact for our contact page there. Please check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode, including this one. And you'll get our guests' info and links to things we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Also, follow us on our Facebook group, Jablam Sports. Check us out, folks. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.